In this video today, we're going to be talking about building out an AI agent that is trained on the history of your company's data, and it will reply in the form of a chatbot back to you and also be able to schedule tasks. So take a look at this example because this is so cool. So we're training it on things like documents here, but this could be anything. It could be your website, it could be your Notion pages, whatever it is. And we're going to insert that data into a Pinecone vector database. If this looks unfamiliar to you, no worries. We're going to be going over this extensively. You're going to know exactly what every single piece is doing here. And then we're going to create a chatbot that is able to respond back to your questions or your customers' questions and then generate tasks for you. So take a look at this. In this particular question down here, I'm going to say, what is the date of the event in the contract? And it's going to pull the date off of the contract that we uploaded here. So we can see the date is 2023 on November 11th. And then we can even say, awesome, can you please send me over the remaining balance? And we can also generate tasks using this AI agent as well. So it's going to send something over to Airtable. So take, for example, if you're using this for a customer service agent, you could essentially have this interact with your customers and then generate tasks for you, such as finding the remaining balance and sending that over to the customer, right? So in this video, we're going to be building this out. It's going to be a two-part series. It looks complicated. It's actually very simple to build out, and we're going to be walking through this every step of the way. If you guys are interested in downloading the blueprints, they will be in the description absolutely for free. As always, all you have to do is hit these three dots in n8n and then import it into your project file. Of course, we are using n8n for this tutorial today, and it is free to get started. So if you guys are interested in this, let's dive in and build this together. All right, so the first thing we need to do is create a new workflow and add a trigger. Now the trigger is what is going to start this particular workflow. And essentially the way that I want to set this up, and by the way, there's multiple ways of doing this, but I want to set it up so that when we receive documents in a Google Drive folder, we're going to start this particular workflow, right? So it's an automated process. Document comes into Google Drive, and then we store that into something like our database, our vector database here. And then essentially from there, we can use this information in our RAG system chatbot here, right? So it can do things like reply to customers, it can do things like create tasks for us. And so we're gonna be building this out, but the first thing that I wanna do is create that trigger. And what that is Google Drive. So we'll go ahead and choose Google Drive. And the trigger that we're gonna be using is on changes involving a specific folder. Essentially what that means is that any time there's a change at all that happens in our particular folder here, then we're going to start this workflow. So that looks good to me. We're gonna need to set up credentials to connect our account in with. Now this is gonna take a little bit of maneuvering to get this to be set up, but we're gonna walk through this together because when you add in your credentials, you're gonna have to get something called a client ID and a client secret, and we will be walking through this together and building this out. I suspect that in a few months after releasing this, this will not be an issue anymore and you'll just be able to log in pretty fast, but let's walk through this together. So the first thing that I wanna do is I wanna go over to the Google Cloud Console. So I'm gonna type this in to Google, and we can just go ahead and open up this tab. And if you haven't done so already, just make sure to log into the correct Gmail account. And first things first, we're gonna create a new project. And so how we create a new project is just right up here, we're gonna click this, and we're going to create a new project right here, okay? And I'm gonna call this n8n3. And you guys can call it whatever you want. And then I'm gonna leave it as no organization. I'm gonna go ahead and click create. And once that has been loaded in, then we can go ahead and switch into that account so that we can start editing that account together. So I'm gonna come back up to here and I'm gonna select n8n-3. Perfect. Once we've gone ahead and done that, we can log into API and services here. And keep in mind, all we're trying to do right now is we're just trying to connect in Google Drive so that when documents come into this folder, we can start this workflow so that effectively we can store data in a Pinecone database. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to search into the top Google Drive up here. Essentially, we just want to give n8n permission to access our Google Drive. So first result, we'll click enable on Google Drive here, and then we're already like a third of the way there. This is, we're making good progress right now. And so once we give Google Drive permission here, the next step that we need to do is create credentials, okay? And so in the create credentials, we can just go ahead and effectively, just select Google Drive API here, application data, we'll choose next here, and service account name, I'm just gonna call this n8n, and we can just create and continue from here. And then moving forward, we'll select a role, which is owner, and then continue it forward as well. And then essentially with this, we can just select done, and this is just optional here. So now we've created the credentials. And lastly, what we need to do is create the OAuth consent screen, and then we're pretty much good to go. We'll click get started here. And I'm just gonna again call this n8n, and I'm gonna enter in my support email here. The audience is gonna be external. We're gonna click next, and we're gonna enter in our contact information here. So this is just an email, and we'll click next, and I agree to the terms of service and create. Okay, perfect. And we're pretty much there. We can click create OAuth client from here on out. We'll select web application, and then again, we can call this n8n. I'm very original with my names today. And you can see down below here, it says authorize redirect URIs. We can add a URI down here. And if we go back, we can see that n8n is actually giving us a redirect URI. All we have to do is click copy here and then paste that right in here, click create, and now we have our secret key and our client key. We can click this edit button here, and effectively from here on out, we have our client ID that we can paste in, and we also have our secret key down here, which we can copy as well, and we can paste it in here and then sign in with our Google account. Just before we sign in, the only thing that I want to do here is come up to audience. I'll click save here, come up to audience, and we're going to add a test user here. And if you don't add a test user or publish the application, then you're going to run into an error here. So I'm just going to quickly do this because we haven't actually pushed it live yet or given n8n permission until this step is completed. And then that is out of the way and we've officially connected our account. We're going to come back here and sign in with Google. And we'll select the right account and click continue, and we're good to go. So essentially we just created like a Google application there, and we've connected it n8n into our Google account, and you can see that the account has now officially been connected. So we're good to go. We can exit out of this, and now essentially every single time a file has been loaded into Google Drive, we can now access it. We've created the credentials. The next thing is the polling times. So effectively, if you guys can see my whiteboard here, we're dealing with something called polling. And what polling is we're just going from like n8n is sending a request to our particular Google Drive every single, X amount of minutes, right? And right now it's just set to 1 minute. And it's checking, hey, has something happened? Has something been uploaded? And if the answer is yes, then it'll send that data back. But if the answer is no, then it will not send that data back, right? And so this is how polling works. You just check at a specific frequency. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 1 minute, it could be 60 minutes, it could be 1 day, and so on and so forth. But the only problem with this is if you keep it at 1 minute here, that means that we're gonna be polling this 1,440 times in a given day. That's because this is how many minutes are in a given day, which is problematic because if your plan is like the beginner plan, you only have 2,500 executions a month, which means that this is not going to be good. You're going to run out of executions really fast here. So we need to change this so that it's not 1 minute, but rather it's like maybe 30 minutes or something like that. I think 60 minutes is too slow. 1 minute is too fast, but maybe 30 minutes is ideal. So we'll circle back and we're going to add this in. What we need to do is we need to choose custom polling times here, and it'll give us this cron expression. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to search up cron expression n8n, and we can take a look and see what they say for examples here. So I'm just going to scroll down the page, and they have this every 5 minutes or so. So I'm going to paste this in here, and instead of 5 minutes, I'm just going to change it to 30 minutes here. And that's pretty much good to go. Now every 30 minutes, we're going to query or pull that particular Google Drive file. And that way we're not spending too many operations, but we're not also waiting too long either. So we can go ahead and just select the folder. You can see here that this is saved in the test folder here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. So test folder. And in a couple seconds, it'll load it in. Perfect. And we just need to watch for files being created. There's a lot of different things, right? Files updated, folders created, but we're specifically looking for files being added into this workflow. So that's good to me. That looks good to me. Let's go ahead and test this out. And it should draw an error here, I think, because there's nothing in here yet. Actually, there is, right? So we added something in here. If you guys haven't done so already, you can just create a folder, add something in there, and this should work moving forward. I'm gonna go ahead and pin this data moving forward, just so that what pinning means is we're using this data, we're recycling it every single time for test data while we get this scenario up and running. So that's good. Next thing is that we want to take this particular file here and we want to download this, right? We want to download this so that we can push this into our vector database. So how we do that, again, is coming back and selecting Google Drive one more time, and we're going to download a file. And this, for this particular module, all we have to do is effectively just select the file by ID. And you can see if we switch to something like JSON, actually let's go to schema. If we go to schema, there should be an ID somewhere in this nested all the way down at the bottom here. And we can just paste that in and we're good to go. So now we can run this one more time and test it out. And after this is successful, we can take a look and see that we have in fact downloaded the file. Okay, perfect. Now we've gone ahead, we've downloaded the file, and I want to add this into our Pinecone vector store, right? So we can add documents to the vector store. And so let's go ahead and do this. And from here on out, we need to create a Pinecone account. Okay, and so before we actually do that, I just want to kind of talk about what this is here. So Pinecone is a vector store. You can think of like a vector database as, you know, storing particular text. So you can think about like, you know, all this text. It's essentially breaking it up and it's storing it so that we can come back and retrieve that text easily. So if you have a question like, hey, what is the date of the contract? It's going to pull in the information and it's going to retrieve the exact query that somebody is looking for. And so this is just a really efficient way of storing data. And we're gonna get into how this is stored and all this kind of stuff. I just wanna give you a brief overview, but it's a very efficient way of storing this data and retrieving that data to give you hyper-specific answers to the questions that you have. Okay, perfect. So we'll go ahead and we're gonna create a Pinecone account. Now we'll create credentials here, and we need to actually get an API key from Pinecone. So we'll head over to pinecone.io. There's a lot of different solutions in the marketplace. This is just my favorite personally. I've been using this for quite a while. And we can go ahead and log in. Actually, yeah, we can go ahead and log in or create an account. I'm just gonna log in because I already have an account here. So I'm just gonna skip that step. And once you're inside, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and create our own vector Pinecone database. And how we do that is in databases here, we'll choose indexes, and we're gonna create an index. And I'm just gonna call this n8n-3 here. And all of this stuff is pretty much gonna stay the exact same. The only thing that we want to do is configure the embedding model here. And we're gonna talk about this, but essentially there's a lot of different ways. Embedding is just like how you encode words. So if we like circle back to embeddings here, essentially what an embedding is it's a numerical representation of text that captures semantic meaning. So think about it this way, like the word car and automobile have different spellings, but they pretty much mean the exact same thing. So embeddings help machines understand the semantic similarity. So using like embedding and storing it in a vector database, it knows that like a cat, dog, and wolf are all animals, and they're much more similar to one another than like an orange is or a mango is, right? So it's kind of capturing words by proxies or how similar they are and bunching them in together and essentially putting a numerical value to that to capture the meaning of it, right? So you can almost think of it like a three-dimensional space where it's just clustering keywords and specific words together that are very similar to one another, and then it will search based on the semantic meaning of those words to find hyper-relevant text to deliver back, right? In the case of like a chatbot here, you're asking a question, it's giving you a hyper-specific result back. And so what we're gonna do here is choose the right embedding model, which is gonna be text embedding 3 small. Everything else is gonna stay the same, and we're gonna go ahead and create that index. From here, what I wanna do, just to finish off this integration, is to come into the API integrations here, and I'm gonna do n8n-4. I'm gonna create this key, and I can just copy this, circle back, paste it in to the API key section here, save it, and we've now connected in our Pinecone account to n8n. So awesome. Finally, the last thing just to do here is we want to actually choose that right index because if you're starting out with Pinecone for the first time, you're only going to have one. But I'm just going to go ahead and choose the one I just created here. And we have options. We can add in like a Pinecone namespace. Essentially, more or less, what that means is that you can just separate the data into different like sections. So, for example, maybe you have something for sales or customer service or whatever, and you want to separate those data sources. You can go ahead and do that. And for this, I'm just going to go ahead and put sales in here, but it really doesn't matter what you put. And so we've gone ahead, we've created this vector database using Pinecone, and we need to do 2 more things. We need to add in embedding, right? And so we're just circling back, going to choose the correct embedding that we selected in the first place. So you can see here, we've chosen text embedding 3 small. And so we're gonna go ahead and choose embeddings by OpenAI. And again, you can choose whatever it is you want here. You just need to make sure it matches with what you put as in Pinecone. So I'll go ahead, choose OpenAI, and then select text embedding 3 small, make sure those match. And then this is all set. We don't actually have to do anything else here. And then lastly, we just have to add in something called a document loader. Now, if you want to think about a document loader as simply as possible, it's just essentially converting those files, like PDFs, for example, into like text or into data accessible for embedding and retrieval. So the easiest way to think about that is like PDF to text, but in this case, it's just making data accessible for embedding models, right? And so that's essentially what we're doing here. And so we'll just use the default data loader. This is built into n8n, so it makes it super easy. And then the data type that we want to use is going to be binary data. And we're just switching the data type here because that's compatible with Pinecone. Pinecone prefers to have binary data. So we're gonna go ahead and choose that. And this is pretty much good to go, right? So we're now breaking up this text into smaller pieces. We're breaking up we're making the text accessible. And then the last part is breaking it up into smaller pieces, which is called the text splitter. Now, again, text splitting is just breaking up larger chunks of text, like this contract here. Maybe instead of having like this whole contract just being stuffed into the vector database, maybe it wants to break it up by like a line or paragraph, right? And so that's essentially what we're doing. And the reason why this is the case is because with text splitting, it just like these models work better with smaller chunks of data, right? So this helps avoid when you provide too much information, it's not going to be able to retrieve the exact answer that you're looking for. It works better with smaller data sets. And there's multiple different ways of breaking up this text. And the best option is the recursive character text splitter. That sounds super confusing, but essentially what it means is that when you break up text, you're trying to break it up by like blocks of paragraphs or sentences to keep the meaning intact. So in this instance, we're breaking up text by like a paragraph or by a line, whereas something like a character splitter will take a sentence and it'll literally cut it at like maybe 30 characters. And that might be in the center of the actual sentence. And then the meaning's lost, right? And that's not beneficial, especially if you're trying to build out like chatbots or AI agents and all that kind of stuff. So we're just gonna make sure to try and keep the meaning intact with a recursive character text splitter. And then we're pretty much good to go. All we need to do is save and test this workflow. So we've gone ahead, we're now downloading that file. We're gonna insert that into the Pinecone vector store. And we can see that everything's all set. And now just circling back to Pinecone, I'm going to refresh the page here, and we should be able to actually see all the records that have been stored. And the interesting thing about this Pinecone vector database is, again, we're taking one document here, right? And we're breaking it up into essentially 32 different smaller pieces of text. And yeah, so this is more or less what we're left with, which is pretty cool. And so essentially what we've done is we've gone from just breaking up a document and embedding it, and then creating like a vector embedding, which is like all these numbers, so that we can store it in a database so that we can easily retrieve that, right? So it's like, hey, if we're looking for a cat, we know to look over here. If we're looking for like a koala or an elephant, it's like it's probably going to be over near the animal section rather than where the fruits and everything else are stored. So this is essentially what it means to have a vector database, to pull in hyper-specific results to the answers to the questions that you're looking for. And so that is effectively the first workflow that is done. And this is storing data in a vector database. Okay, sweet. And we're going to move on here to now the second workflow. So I'm just gonna go back to personal projects and create another workflow. And similarly to what I showed in the example, what we're gonna be doing here is building out this AI agent that now is trained on our data, and we're going to generate responses to that data. So let's circle back here. And the first thing I wanna do as a trigger, and there is a lot of options here, but I wanna choose this on chat message. This is just essentially a chatbot built into n8n, and it's very easy and intuitive for testing purposes. So I've gone ahead, added that in there. I just exited off because there's no extra configuration we need to do. And we're gonna click chat here, and I can just say, hey, right? And essentially what's gonna happen here is it's going to not say anything back, and I think my face is actually blocking this, so we're just going to move on here. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to I'm going to create an advanced AI section here, and we're going to go into the AI agent component. And this is where things get interesting because we're able to build out that AI agent to be able to handle these documents, find data based on them, and respond to customers. And so there's lots of different AI agents that we can build. You can take a look here. Some are conversational, some are tools based. And so you might be thinking this is mostly for conversational, and you could definitely do that, but I'm just going to leave it as tools because I think the cool thing is about this, just circling back to the finished product here, is like, yeah, you know, we can reply to people, no problem. But what makes this super cool is the fact that if you were to use this for like something like customer service, you could literally create tasks for your team to do. If somebody's like, hey, send me the remaining balance invoice, you create a task for somebody to do that. Or maybe you just send that remaining balance invoice automatically. Maybe they're like, hey, I want to update this about my company. And you're like, sure, no problem. And you just automatically have this AI agent go ahead and update the person in the CRM or whatnot, right? So I want to leave it for a tools agent because this is kind of like a building block or the foundations for you to go off and use. And so this all looks good to me. There's not really anything else other than maybe the system message, which we'll come back to later on. And so there's 3 different things that we need to do here. First is the chat model. And essentially what the chat model is it's just like the reasoning. It's like, you know, what's the brain in the AI agent? And that is going to be ChatGPT. ChatGPT, just like logging into ChatGPT, is going to be responding to all the questions, formulating everything, putting it all together, giving you a response back. And so we're going to choose OpenAI chat model here. And 4.0 mini seems good to me. This is pretty much good outside the box. If you guys haven't done so already, you just need to create an account for this. I'm sorry, I should have gone through this a bit earlier, but essentially you can create the credentials here and then just get your API key. And all you do is go to platform.openai.com and you can go into the, once you're signed in, the dashboard and the API keys here. And then you can generate an API key using the button here and then paste that right into here and you're good to go. And so that is the chat model that's completed. The next thing is actually giving memory. So what memory means is it's like, hey, if I message this chatbot once and I ask it, hey, what's the capital city of, I don't know, like Ontario, it might be like it's Toronto. And if I say, hey, what's the weather there like? and I don't give it a memory, it's going to be like, what's the weather of what? I don't know what you're talking about. And so with the memory window here, you're essentially saying, hey, I want you to remember the conversation. Like, I want you to remember my past messages and your past responses. And so with that being said, you can add in the context window length, and you can think about this as like, how many past messages do you want it to remember? 5 is a good start for now, and you can add on to it later on if you want to, right? It depends how much of the conversation do you want it to remember. And so that's part number 2 here. And then lastly, we have tools here, and we're going to add 2. We're going to start with the main one. This is the secret sauce in the AI agent, which makes it so freaking powerful. And so the first thing that I want to do is I want to come in and I want to have this vector store question and answer tool. So you can think about this as like the RAG chatbot that is going to take the information that you upload, like this particular Google Drive document here, retrieve it, and then answer back based on the questions that you had regarding the information that it has in this Pinecone store here, right? So we just have one document for now. You can load in as much as you want. The more you load in, the better it's going to be. And so I'm going to select this this module here, and we just need to give it a name. I'm just going to call this Pinecone vector store. And so for this description here, more or less, we just want to give the AI agent an understanding of when to call this tool. So I'm going to say, call this tool when a customer has a question and you need to provide an answer to that person. Okay, and so more or less all we're saying is it's going to, when this AI agent is working and a question comes in, it's gonna be like, what tool do I use? Do I create a task in Notion or Airtable? Do I answer the question? Do I do something else? And so all we're doing is we're just saying, if there's a question, make sure to respond to that question. Here is the tool, right, that we're giving you to respond to that particular question. And this takes 2 things here. The first one is going to be the model, which is very similar to this. It's just the reasoning or the brain behind it. And we're going to choose GPT-4o Mini. This looks good to me. And so that's the first step. There's really nothing else to do there. And then we have the vector store model, or the vector store here. And because we're using Pinecone in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and select Pinecone, connect in the correct account, and we are going to retrieve documents as vector store for chain and tool. So this looks good to me. We're just going to keep it as the default, and we just need to choose the list that we're looking to grab things from, which is that vector store or that index that we just created right here, right? And I called it n8n3. And so that's pretty much good to go. You can also just choose the namespace, and for this it's going to be sales, and I just chose sales because this is like a sales contract and all that kind of stuff. So we're good to go there. Lastly, we just need to add in an embedding model, and the reason why we're doing embedding is, if we come back to our nifty document here, embedding is a 2-way process. It's for when you add data into the vector store, and it's when you retrieve data from it. So RAG stands for retrieval augmented generation. It's retrieval and it's generation, right? So in the first module, we generated the documents, or we generated the data in here, and we needed to encode it. And secondly, we need to essentially encode our question to be able to find the right data. So we're essentially going to ask a question, and then we're going to encode it into this numerical representation of just numbers. And then we're going to use those numbers, which act as like semantic meaning, to be like, okay, we're looking for like a cat. Where's a cat in here? And then maybe there, it'll find and there's an exact match, or maybe it'll be like, we're looking for a whale and there's no exact answer here, but it's going to find the next closest thing, which could be sparrow, cat, dog, or wolf. And because we used whale or dolphin or fish or whatever, it's going to come up with something very similar to that, rather than going over here and being like, hey, I think you were looking for a mango. Or are you looking for an orange? I can't tell. So we're going to get either an exact match or as close to a match as possible. And so with this embedding, we're just going to embed the question that we ask using the embeddings model here. And that is, again, going to be the text embed 3 small. Whatever it is that you put for the index here, you'll want to choose for this embedding model. We chose embedding 3 small. And so that is pretty much all set. And that's more or less it for the chat component of this. So we can go ahead and we can give this a shot. And you can see here that I said, hey, and nothing came up because we didn't have any AI agent or RAG system or Pinecone set up. And so now what I can do is I can go ahead and test this model out. So what I want to do here is I want to ask some questions. So maybe like, hey, I'm going to ask, what discount did you give me? Hey, what discount did you give me? And we'll go ahead and see if it answers. You can see that it is querying the database, and it has given us a 10% discount applied to the original contract value, right? And so that's pretty cool. We can also ask things like, what services are there? So there's DJ services here, there's photo services here, and there should be video services here. So let's go ahead and see if it can pull that out. What are the services listed on this contract? And so it's figuring out the answer, understanding it needs to send it to the vector database, retrieves the data from Pinecone, and then formulates the response back, and then sends it over to us again. And so it says, okay, well, there's a lot more than just that. It looks like there's DJ services, default 2 speakers, 2 lights, controller, and all this kind of stuff. And I guess that this isn't like a perfect example because it's probably pulling out additional things from this contract, which is like all these potential upsells that they didn't check off. And so it has no conceptual way of knowing that the checkbox is on or off. And so obviously when you're uploading data, I'd be cognizant of that, because this is, it's probably a good point to mention that, like, these are just default listed there. So that's obviously not a perfect example, but we could also do like, hey, what's the date of the event? What was the date of the event listed? And it's going to go ahead and it's going to give us an answer based on what it pulls in from the contract, which is November 11th. And you can see here, again, it gets the date slightly confused with 2032. Actually, that is correct. It is 2032. Maybe I'm confused at the end of the day. Cool. So that's pretty much it. And now what I want to do is I just want to take it one step further, and I want to add in one more module where we can supercharge this AI agent, where we not only give it access to reply back to people, but we also give it access to create tasks on our behalf, right? And so that's where we can add in another tool here. And this next tool is going to be, it's just going to be Airtable. And so what we can do here is allow ourselves to add tasks into this Airtable for our team to come in afterwards and be like, okay, the AI agent responded to a customer. They wanted this question to be done. Now I actually have to go and do that, and then I'll just check it off and then notify the client once it's done. So that's what we're going to set up here. And so how we do this is we need to connect into our account, into our Airtable account. If you guys haven't done so already, you can go to Airtable and sign up with a free trial to get started here. And then you'll just need to create your first Airtable database, which you can just click this create button here, start from scratch, and so on and so forth, and then you'll be set up in no time. And so we're going to create a new credential here, and we need this access token. And so in order to get this access token, I'm going to open the docs here, which it had, and I'm just going to read what it says. So we need a personal access token. So we need to go to the personal access token page here and essentially just create a new token. And I'm just going to call this n8n-4. And we need to add these 3 scopes. So I'm going to copy this in and add the scopes. And then we should be good to go with this integration here. Sweet. And schema is the last one. Okay, perfect. And then we need to add a base, and I'm just going to choose all bases in our account now and in the future. We can go ahead, copy this in to the access token here, save it, and we should be officially good to go. So we've now connected this in. Okay, perfect. Now that we've connected in the integration, all we need to do is set this up so that it can actually generate tasks for us in ClickUp. And so we're going to choose record, and we're going to create, and we want to choose the base, which is just, I think in this case, it's going to be test here. And I'm going to select the right table here. And effectively, if you've gone ahead and you created that base, in my instance, it's just like I created this test base here and there should be like a table or whatnot. Weird. From list, and we have table 1. And so we have all of these particular values up here, name, notes, assignee, and status. And so all we have to do is just enter in this data, right? And it's going to just enter it in, right? So how we can go about doing this, because we don't know what the client is necessarily going to be asking us to do. And so this is actually way simpler than it looks. I'm just going to choose expression for all of these. What expression means is that instead of us hard coding like text in here, we're going to allow n8n to take care of this for us. And so I'm going to hit these squirrely brackets on my keypad twice to create a variable or an expression here. I'm going to hit the $sign and I'm going to say from AI. And essentially what this does is it just allows AI to fill this in for me. So it's going to read the conversation, understand what the person's looking for, and then automatically fill this in. And so it takes two variables here. The first thing is just the placeholder name. So we can just say this is like the task name. And then the second variable here, which is separated by a comma, and they're within brackets, is the description of the particular variable here, right? So we're just trying to pull out task name and we're just describing what task name is. This is the name of the task, right? And so it's going to be like, what could the task name be? So if I said send remaining balance invoice, the name would be like something like find or send remaining balance invoice. And then we can just paste this all the way down and we can just say task description here. This is the description of the task. And then we can do the same thing for, actually, I'm just going to leave it like that. And I'm going to leave the assignee empty. And this is actually going to be fixed. And I'm just going to choose to do. And let's see if I can do the same thing here. I'm just going to leave assignee empty because this is a bit more tricky to configure and it's not necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I've configured this properly. We can go ahead and delete all these values here and try this one more time. What is the date of the event listed? Can you please send me over the remaining balance? And just before I actually send this, I just want to update one thing in the system prompt here so that it understands correctly. And so what we're going to do is just say your helpful assistant. Please make sure to answer any questions from the user to the best of your ability. And if the user has any tasks for you to complete, please send the task over to ClickUp or Airtable and notify the user that we're currently working on the task and we'll let them know when it's done. And so essentially we're just going to say, hey, we're going to answer your question, and if you do have a particular task that needs to be done, we're also going to tell you that we're working on it, right? So let's go ahead, ask this. First thing that it's going to do is it's going to figure out the answer here, and then it has sent us back something being like, hey, however, I do not have the information about the remaining balance. And so that obviously didn't work. So let's just take a look and see what's going on here. And it just comes down to the system prompt here. And the only other thing that I want to enter in is if the user has any tasks or requests anything from us to complete, please call the Airtable tool and notify the user that we're currently working on the task, and it will and we'll let them know when it's done. Okay, cool. So let's give this a shot again. So I'm going to copy this same message in here and paste, and let's see if it works this time. So first things first, it's created the particular task in Airtable, and then it said, I've sent a request to inquire the remaining balance and confirm the event. We're currently working on these tasks and we'll let you know. Okay, perfect. The only problem is that it actually didn't send both paths simultaneously. So what we can do here is we'll come back one more time and say, please make sure to answer any and all questions from the user to the best of your ability. For every message, please query Pinecone to find the right solution. And so there we go. We're just essentially saying this is pretty much mandatory. Now we can try it one more time. And we can see here that it is now access database or Airtable. Then it's found the question for it. And now it's delivering both simultaneously. So the date of the event listed in the contract is this. I've also sent a request to inquire about the remaining balance. The request is recorded, and I'll let you know once we have the information. If you need anything else, please let me know. And so this has now been added into the database. And the cool thing too is that like you don't just have to use Airtable. You have lots of other tools here at your disposal. And this isn't like the end all be all. You could also put in this call n8n workflow tool, which essentially would allow you to access other workflows and start those workflows within like so many other opportunities or options, right? So you can connect into thousands of other software applications and really do whatever it is that you want. So of course you could create a task in Airtable, but you could also, for example, update your CRM. You could also just send the remaining balance over. You could schedule a call potentially between that person and a person on your team, right? The options are really endless. It's just so versatile. And lastly, you don't just have to have the chat window here. You can use something like, for example, Twilio. And so Twilio is like a text messaging platform where you can just interface this AI agent with text messages. So you can pick up your phone and send text messages and then receive the response back. And you could also do this with Telegram as well. This is way easier to set up, and you can get this rolling in a couple minutes here. And just if you guys do decide to do that, it does have good documentation here on how to set your account up. All you need to do is open these docs here. And if you use Telegram, it's just going to say, hey, start a chat with this. You can click on this link and then just type in new bot and then just follow down to the end here. And then you're pretty much good to go. And you're set up with Telegram if you want to switch out this particular chat with something else that you don't have to actually log in to n8n to execute. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you found value in it. RAG systems are going to be absolutely game changing in the future, and I think that this is going to be a huge game changer for small to medium sized businesses to leverage this technology to get a competitive advantage in their space. If you guys want the blueprints, again, they will be in the description. All you have to do is download those blueprints and then come in and import that file at the top right corner, and the blueprints are going to be yours in the next few minutes. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks and bye-bye.